Hello, my dear students. Welcome to another class on drama and theatre studies. In this video, we will be looking at an essay titled Kutiyattam Sanskrit Theatre of India, Rasa Bhava Aesthetic Theory and the Question of Taste. It is an essay, a case study by Phillip B. Zarilli. And in this essay, we will be looking at the art form of Kutiyattam through the lens of Rasa Bhava Aesthetic Theory from India and reception theory from the West. First part of this video summarizing this essay or case study, I will be discussing about early Sanskrit theatre and Kutiyattam's origins. Coming to Sanskrit drama conventions, Sanskrit dramas follow specific composition conventions. That is, most of the Sanskrit dramas written in the early ancient periods were based on epics and traditional stories which were familiar to the audience at that time. But later, some dramatists like King Manavendra Varman, he started writing farces which were based on real life stories and invented storylines and all that. And another important fact about Sanskrit theatre conventions is that the stage itself is divided into zones. In the performance of Sanskrit dramas. So the actors will be moving between these areas, indicating that there is a shift in locality, say shift of scene and all that. So there is a spatial storytelling technique by dividing stage into certain different zones in early Sanskrit theatre. And coming to the rise of Kutiyattam. Kutiyattam technically means, it literally means combined acting. You already know that Chakyars and Nangyars combine their acting together in Kutiyattam. So Kutiyattam style emerged in Kerala around 900 CE. And it has a specific distinctive regional style of performing Sanskrit dramas. And we can definitely say that there were two important figures behind the rise of Kutiyattam. One is King Kulashegara Varman. He was a patron who shaped the tradition. He even authored two dramas that are still performed under Kutiyattam today. And we also know that Kutiyattam was performed in a temple context. It was performed exclusively in high caste Kerala temples, and it was offered as a visual sacrifice to the deities in these temples. And these specialized theatre spaces that were built for the performance of Kutiyattam, those spaces were called Kootambalams. In addition to Kulashegara Varman, the king, there was also a famous Brahmin scholar named Tolan who also worked behind making this art form a success. And both these people, they revolutionized certain innovations. They brought in some revolutionary innovations onto the stage in this Kutiyattam style of acting, which deviated from the staging of Sanskrit dramas which were previously practiced by people. So we can notice four different revolutionary innovations brought in by King Kulashegara and the scholar Tolan. The first one is actually the Malayalam integration, the use of local language. For example, Vidushaka, a character, a comic character, would explain the passages of Sanskrit and Prakrit in the local language Malayalam. One reason why this was used was Malayalam was introduced was for familiarity with the audience. This was not available in the early Sanskrit dramas, the use of a local language. And the second innovation is that every character, when they are introduced, there is a brief narration of their past. So character backstories is another revolutionary innovation which was introduced by King Kulashegara and scholar Tolan. And the third revolutionary innovation is that of performance flexibility. So the actors were actually allowed to deviate from the original Sanskrit script. Why such deviations were made possible? Because in order to explore and elaborate on the meaning of a character, or to delve deep into the psychology of the character, it was allowed for them to deviate from the original script, to delve into the state of mind of the character. And the fourth important innovation, a revolutionary innovation, was actually the introduction of detailed manuals. Two kinds of manuals were provided, acting manuals and stage manuals. Stage manuals actually directed on how to stage plays in this new emergent Kudiyattam style. And acting manuals were provided with instructions for the actors on how to perform in the Kudiyattam style of uh, play acting. Come to the performance context or the unique performance structure and context of Kudiyattam, we can notice that Kudiyattam deviated significantly from Sanskrit dramas in the past. First of all, Kudiyattam was actually performed within these special spaces called Koothambelams, as we already mentioned, and as a visual sacrifice to the deities. And in Kudiyattam, another thing we have to mention is that the Sanskrit dramas are not performed in full on one particular day. Actually, drama is divided into sections, and only certain sections of the drama actually are performed in Kudiyattam. And what we can actually identify is that before each section is staged, there will be lengthy preliminaries, that is, lengthy introductions featuring main characters on specific nights and all that. On a particular night, only a certain section of the Sanskrit drama will be performed. And even before the performance, lengthy introductions are provided. And also elaborations are given. Explanations and explorations of each character's psychology and meaning are provided. And after a series of nights of performing snippets from the original Sanskrit drama, the final night will bring together all the actors, and that will be the stage when combined acting or Kudiyattam will be performed. And a single scene can actually take as many as 5 nights to 45 nights to enact in Kudiyattam. So that is actually quite different from Sanskrit dramas in the past. Next part of the essay, Philip Zarilli undertakes a case study of a farcical drama called The Hermit slash Harlot, written by King Mahendravarman in the 7th century. So this is a one-act Sanskrit farce, and along with that there is only one other one-act Sanskrit farce, that is The Drunken Monk, also written by King Mahendravarman. And this particular drama is actually unlike any typical Sanskrit drama. The plot is invented rather than derived from epics. The plot is completely invented by the author. So first of all, there is a prologue in this drama. So a character named Sutradhara, he is actually the leader of the troupe. He comes and speaks to the audience, and in this talk he establishes the comedic tone of the drama and the structure of the drama that they are going to watch soon. And all this he tells by communicating to an actor, a character named Vidushaga. So in this particular prologue itself, the Sutradhara actually mentions that we are going to perform a farce, because actually comedy is the best of all the rasas. Hasya is the best of all the rasas, according to this particular Sutradhara, and which is actually ironic, because Hasya was one of the less favorable rasas in the theatre according to Natya Shastra and the Sanskrit practices. And coming to the plot of this particular drama, we can see that the main character is Shandilya. He is a wandering mendicant. He has switched many religions, and now he has to learn from a teacher called Bhagavan. Bhagavan belongs to a sect of Hindu Shaivites who are very strict in their yogic practices and austerities and all that. So they go around the village begging alms and all that. And finally, they are resting in a garden for meditation. While the guru is meditating, Shandilya is looking across the garden, and he sees a fair young courtesan is waiting for her lover, and he immediately falls in love with her. And then what happens afterwards becomes the plot of this drama. Actually, soon something happens, and the souls of Bhagavan and this courtesan is switched. So that is why the hermit, actually the Bhagavan has the courtesan's soul, and the hermit has the harlot or the courtesan soul, and vice versa. So this makes a lot of tension in the drama and a lot of comedy in the drama. We can see that Chandilya becomes a comic foil. He is actually courting the lady without knowing that his own guru's soul is in the courtesan. So that brings out the comedy in the drama. So it has an invented plot, a farcical plot involving the exchange of souls between a supposedly learned ascetic Bhagavan and a courtesan, and Chandilya serves as a comic foil. So, what we can identify from the case study is that, according to the traditional stage manual provided along with the Hermit Harlot, the staging of this play would at least take 35 performance nights. And the genre is farce. And as I mentioned in the prologue, Sutradhara concludes that the Hasya is the most important rasa. And this is really amusing for us because farce or comedy was actually considered as a minor dramatic form. So there is a meta theatrical level of humor. Meta theater means theater within the theater. So there is a mention of theater while we are watching a play. So there are two levels of theater in that. And in that meta theatrical level layer, humor is also created. And in the Kudiyattam traditions, the play also shifts in meaning. So the scene between Bhagavan and Chandilya, it becomes less about farcical humor and more about the serious allegory on the interaction between God and the human soul. So the Vidushaka also makes commentary about the philosophical issues. In certain nights, the Vidushaka performs as a character in Kudiyattam, and the Vidushaka comments about the philosophical issues. And all those sequences of Vidushaka is done in the local language Malayalam. For more than 7 nights, Vidushaka's commentaries are there. And people used to go and enjoy these in Kootambalams. I mentioned is already presented. And we will go to the second part of the essay. In this second part of the essay, we will be looking at Rasa Bhava aesthetic theory. And we have already mentioned in the class and we have defined Rasa and Bhava. Rasa Bhava aesthetic is actually the central organizational concept for theatre. And this was established in the text called Natya Shastra Bhai Bharata. Rasa is actually the ultimate aesthetic experience. Rasa means something which we can taste. So actually, like a meal's taste will have the taste of all the ingredients present. Rasa is also a mixture of all the different emotions and different elements presented in the stage itself. Now, coming to bhava. Bhava means state of being or doing. It is actually what the actors offer as the meal. The actors have to embody before the audience what to offer them up to taste. So that is called bhava. So it is actually the duty of actor to establish a dominant emotion or a bhava. And the third important word or concept which I am concentrating here is Sahridaya. Sahridaya means an ideal spectator. You go into the Kootambalam to watch a Kudiyattam and your hearts and minds are attuned to appreciate the performance. Whatever is being performed, you go with a readiness to accept that and to enjoy that. Then you are not a mere spectator, you become elevated to the status of a Sahridaya. And finally, the fourth concept here I would like to elaborate on is Ananda. Ananda is actually a state of bliss that is achieved by the spectator or the Sahridaya. After the spectator watches the performance, the spectator is completely able to align himself to what the actors and the author has intended. And then it brings a state of bliss in his mind, and that is called Ananda. Shastra, we can identify 8 permanent states of being or bhava or sthayi bhava, and each sthayi bhava will have an accompanying rasa, will have a corresponding rasa. We have already covered this in the classroom, but I'll quickly mention these 8 rasas here. So the 8 rasas are when pleasure or delight is shown, delight or rati bhava is acted out. The corresponding rasa is erotic or shringara. When hasa or laughter is the state of being, the corresponding rasa is comic or is the comic or hasya. Shoga bhava leads to karuna rasa. Krodha bhava leads to raudra rasa. Utsaha bhava leads to veera rasa. Bhaya bhava leads to bhayanaka rasa. Jugupsa bhava leads to bhibhatsa rasa. Vismaya bhava leads to adbhuta rasa. So these are the 8 bhavas and the corresponding rasas. And how these rasas operate, that is actually interesting to identify. So the rasa theory operates on 2 levels. First of all, the audience's experience of state of moods arising from the actor's embodiment. For example, the a member in this audience will identify with one or more of the characters on the drama stage. That will actually help create rasa. And moreover, more than that, the performance in as an aesthetic perception of the whole performance, that can also help evoke rasa. And as I mentioned, we already mentioned the ideal spectator or sahridaya. Before that, let me just mention that the philosopher Abhinava Gupta in the 10th to 11th centuries, he is the one who put forward this idea of ideal spectator or sahridaya. Sahridaya is one whose heart or mind is attuned to appreciate the performance. So the goal of the ideal spectator is to lift their mind to a state of bliss called ananda, as we have already mentioned. So that brings us to the end of the second part of the essay. Now we will look at the third part of the essay, which will concentrate on reception theory. Reception theory is actually developed in German literary studies in the 1960s and 70s. Reception theory actually, there is a shift. We can notice that earlier we assume that the meaning is contained in the text itself. Now there is a shift of focus from the text to how a reader or audience makes sense of the work. So the meaning is not just in the text, the meaning is also in the mind of the audience or the reader or the spectator. So they are the ones who determine the meaning. Actually, this how meaning is formulated in the audience's mind is dependent on the culture's aesthetic expectations and the conventions used in the stage or the poetry or something like that, and how these theories change over a period of time. And if we focus on negative reactions of critics and audiences, we can identify the standards and the fierce sense of ownership of an interpretive community. So in order to understand how meaning is created in the mind of an audience, it might be better to look at how negative, it is easier to understand how negative reactions are formulated. So that is why the focus of this case study is on a 15th century critique against Kutiyattam. In the 15th century, a highly educated local Sanskrit connoisseur, he wrote a scathing article called "God on the Actors." He condemns Kutiyattam's style of acting. He says that Kutiyattam has a lot of unfounded foul practices, and he calls these practices blasphemous and illogical defilements of the original ancient Sanskrit drama. So according to him, he wants an uninterrupted flow of dramatic action, and he wants performers and writers of drama to adhere to Bharata Muni's precepts, concepts of drama. And especially he condemns three things. That is interruption of the story. While the dramatic action is going on, you shouldn't interrupt the drama to elaborate on something, introduce a character or anything like that. He condemns that. And then he condemns the use of regional tongue. He says that you shouldn't switch to Malayalam. If it is written in Sanskrit, so it should be performed in Sanskrit. That was the second point of condemnation. And our essay writer, Phillip Zarilli, says that why this negative criticism about Kutiyattam happened is that there was a shift in aesthetics at that particular point of time. the way of acting changed from the drama, Sanskrit drama, to Kudiyattam. And actually, the expectations of this particular connoisseur and where he was coming from, that actually differed. That is why this kind of, when we look at the reception theory, we can look at it through the lens of reception theory. We can understand why he felt like Kudiyattam was actually a set of unfounded foul practices and all that. This essay by saying that Philip Zarilli also says that despite a lot of criticisms like this, Kudiyattam tradition actually persisted, and it was highly appreciated by the high caste interpretive community as one of their unique delights. Sorry, only high caste people had access to Kutampalams at that time, and they really enjoyed and relished the performance, including the dramatic action and also the Vidushaga's lengthy philosophical elaborations. Even though this 15th century critic was against these philosophical elaborations, the people really actually enjoyed these kind of philosophical explanations and all that. So the Kudiyattam has a distinctive style, and this distinctive style is guided by the Rasa Bhava aesthetic, and it is reflected both in its development within the Kerala's regional culture and the major language change involving the decline of Sanskrit as an everyday spoken language. So Kudiyattam was actually much suited for the Malayali audience at that time because it was guided by the Rasa Bhava aesthetic of the time. And it also showed how Kerala's regional culture was thriving and developing. And also it can be noticed that the use of Malayalam notified that there was a decline of Sanskrit as the everyday spoken language. So that brings us to the end of the summarizing of this essay. I hoped it was very beneficial for you. Keep watching. Thank you.